There's a manager office who drives a blacked-out BMW, wears a different designer watch every week, and talks about his investment portfolio like it's a second job. He picks up the tab at lunch without blinking. He posts from business lounges and hotel rooftops. From the outside, he looks like someone who figured it out early. His checking account has $340 in it. He's 3 months behind on his car lease. The watch is on a payment plan, and the business lounge access came from a credit card he opened 6 weeks ago that he can't actually afford to carry. He is not wealthy. He is performing wealth, and the performance is costing him everything. Here's what nobody talks about loudly enough. We are living inside the most sophisticated illusion economy in human history. Americans now carry $1.28 trillion in credit card debt. That's not a rounding error. That's a structural collapse of the line between appearance and reality. The average household sits on over $100,000 in total debt, yet luxury car sales keep climbing. Designer brand revenue keeps growing. Rolex wait lists keep lengthening. The parking lots of cities drowning in consumer debt are full of vehicles that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Something fundamental has broken down. The gap between what people actually have and what they're willing to appear to have has never been wider or more expensive to maintain. Once you understand how this illusion works, the mechanics of it, the psychology underneath it, you'll never look at someone's lifestyle the same way again. More importantly, you'll never make the financial decisions that trap people inside it. Real wealth whispers, fake wealth broadcasts, and once you know the difference, you'll see it everywhere. These are the 10 signs someone is pretending to be rich. The status trap. Sign 1 and 2. Sign 1. The entry-level luxury trap. Walk through any parking garage in any major city and pay attention to what you're actually looking at. Base model BMW, manual seats, no navigation, smallest engine available. Base model Audi with 0 packages. An entry-level Mercedes with the interior of a car that costs $40,000 less. People don't drive these vehicles who love the driving experience. People drive them who love the emblem on the hood. This is the entry-level luxury trap, buying the cheapest version of the most expensive brand, specifically to wear the badge. Here's the number that should stop you cold. A fully loaded Honda Accord costs roughly the same as a stripped-down luxury sedan. The Honda has superior features, better long-term reliability, lower maintenance costs, and a more comfortable interior in most configurations. But the person chasing status will finance the base model BMW anyway, because the Honda doesn't have the 3-pointed star, and the 3-pointed star is what they're actually buying. And then it compounds. That entry-level luxury car carries luxury tier maintenance costs, premium fuel instead of regular, higher insurance premiums, parts that cost 3 times more when something breaks. The base model Mercedes costs significantly more to own over 5 years than the fully loaded Toyota it lost in every performance category. Here's the figure that matters. People pretending to be wealthy typically spend somewhere between 20 and 30% of their monthly income on the appearance of wealth. People who are actually wealthy spend 2 to 5% on the same categories, and usually only after building substantial net worth first. That gap, compounded over 20 years, is the difference between financial freedom and financial exhaustion. The fake rich buy the status symbol first and assume wealth will follow. It rarely does. The truly wealthy build the wealth first, and status, if it comes at all, arrives as an afterthought they don't particularly care about. Sign 2. The future tense financier. Pay attention when someone's money exists. There is a specific type of person who steers every conversation back toward income, deals, and financial success, but never in the past tense and never with receipts. It's always what's coming,
Always the deal closing next month. Always the investment that's about to pay off. Always the opportunity that's going to change everything once it materializes. I've got something massive in the works. Once this closes, I'm done worrying about money. This time next year, you won't recognize my life. The money never arrives in the present. It lives permanently in the future, which means it can never be fact-checked. Watch for the revenue versus profit confusion, one of the most common tells. Someone brags that their business does $600,000 a year. What they don't mention is that after expenses, their actual take-home is closer to $55,000. Still reasonable money, but not the number they're presenting. The exaggeration reveals the gap between the image they need to project and the reality underneath it. People genuinely secure in their financial position don't feel the need to constantly remind everyone how well they're doing. The reminder isn't for you, it's for them. External validation filling an internal void that actual wealth would eventually make unnecessary if they ever stopped spending long enough to build it. The truly wealthy tend to be private about money, not secretive, just indifferent to what strangers think about it. They have nothing to prove and no audience they need to perform for.
The cost of the costume. Signs 3 and 4. Sign 3. The item that costs more than the safety net. There is an old rule that serious money managers use, and it's blunter than most financial advice you'll hear. If you can't afford to buy it twice without stress, you can't actually afford it. Not twice over time, twice right now, with money sitting in an account and your emergency fund still intact afterward. By that standard, a man carrying a $6,000 watch while his savings account holds $3,000 cannot afford the watch. A person financing a luxury bag on a payment plan, paying interest on a depreciating fashion item, isn't making a purchase. They're taking out a loan to wear a costume. Think carefully about what that purchase actually represents. Not success, not financial intelligence, a willingness to sacrifice future security for 3 seconds of impression management with strangers who will forget you saw you within minutes. Here's what the math actually looks like. Finance a $4,000 item at 24% interest, which is close to the current average credit card APR in the United States, and by the time that item is paid off, you've spent somewhere around $5,200 on something now worth less than half its original price. You paid a premium for depreciation on something designed to make you look like you don't need to think about premiums. People with actual wealth buy luxury items differently. The item represents a fraction of their net worth, not a significant portion of their monthly cash flow. The purchase doesn't require a payment plan. It doesn't require them to delay anything else. It doesn't keep them awake. For the person pretending, the item is the point. For the person who's built something real, the item is irrelevant to their actual financial picture either way. Sign 4. The one-upper. You get a promotion. Before the congratulations finish landing, someone in the room has already redirected the conversation to their own bigger promotion, their more impressive title, their larger compensation package. You close on your first home. Within 2 sentences, someone is explaining why you should have waited for a larger property and recounting the superior deal they structured when they bought their first place. 4 bedrooms minimum, excellent appreciation, obvious choice if you understood the market. You mention a trip you're taking. They've already been somewhere better, flew a higher cabin class, stayed at a more exclusive property, and have a story that makes your trip sound like you settled. This is the one-upper, and it reveals more about their financial insecurity than any bank statement could. One-upping is not a personality quirk. It's a survival mechanism for someone whose self-worth is entirely tied to being perceived as more successful than the people around them. Your good news isn't just good news to them. It's a threat, a reminder that someone else is succeeding in a way that might expose the gap between their image and their reality.
Someone genuinely secure, someone who has actually built something, can celebrate your win without calculating how it compares to theirs. They have nothing to defend. Your success doesn't diminish them because their self-worth isn't built on being superior in every exchange. The one-uppers' need to dominate every conversation is exactly proportional to how fragile the image underneath the performance actually is.
The digital performance. Sign 5. The curated wealth feed. Here is something the algorithm figured out before most people did. Spending gets more engagement than saving. Consumption outperforms discipline. A "come shopping with me" video where someone drops $2,000 at a designer boutique will generate more views, more comments, and more shares than a video of someone methodically adding the same $2,000 to an index fund. One feels aspirational. The other feels like homework. This created an incentive structure that now runs quietly underneath an enormous amount of what you see on social media. People learned, consciously or not, that performing wealth generates attention regardless of whether the wealth is real, so they perform it. They document every business lounge, every hotel upgrade, every unboxing, every meal at a restaurant where nothing on the menu has a price next to it. And then they return to an apartment they can barely afford and a credit card balance that's been growing for 8 months. The performance isn't a side effect of their lifestyle. The performance is their lifestyle. The post isn't documenting the experience. The post is the reason for the experience. Watch for the specific tells. Accounts where every photo is staged, but the caption is written to sound spontaneous. Profiles where the follower count is massive, but the comment section is thin or filled with generic phrases that feel automated. People buying the appearance of influence to reinforce the appearance of wealth. Layers of fabrication supporting each other. And notice what's missing. Nobody posts the Saturday they spent at home because they couldn't go out. Nobody films the budget review session. Nobody shares the anxiety of a credit card statement arriving 3 days before payday. Real wealth doesn't need documentation. It doesn't require an audience. The people with the most substantial financial lives are often the least visible online, not because they're hiding, but because they have nothing to prove and no performance to maintain. The mechanics of mimicry. Signs 6, 7, and 8. Sign 6. The perpetual lease. Leasing a vehicle has been so normalized that most people no longer recognize what it actually is. Here's the honest version. When you lease, you are financing the most expensive years of a vehicle's depreciation, the steepest part of the value curve, and then returning the car with nothing to show for it. The dealer calculates what the vehicle will be worth at the end of the lease term and charges you the difference between the purchase price and that residual value, plus interest, plus taxes, plus fees. A $55,000 vehicle worth $32,000 after 3 years means you are effectively financing $23,000 of pure depreciation on top of all carrying costs, and then handing the car back. Then you do it again. Same cycle, same fees, same depreciation financing on a fresh vehicle. Perpetual payments building zero equity year after year. Someone who leases continuously for 15 years has made hundreds of thousands of dollars in payments and owns absolutely nothing at the end. No asset, no equity, no trade-in value, just a long, uninterrupted history of renting the image of success for a monthly fee. The appeal is exactly what it appears to be. The payment fits the budget. The badge looks right. Nobody looking at that car from the outside knows or can tell that the person inside it is building nothing and paying a premium to do so. If someone genuinely values a quality vehicle for reasons beyond status, buying a 2 to 3-year-old certified pre-owned model is dramatically more rational. But slightly used
doesn't carry the smell of new, and new is what the performance requires.
Sign 9. The knockoff tell. If someone is carrying a counterfeit designer item, they have told you something important, not about their taste, but about their priorities. A convincing knockoff bag costs $200 to $350. For the same money, you could purchase a genuinely well-constructed bag from an independent brand. Real leather, quality hardware, original design, built to last, just without a famous monogram. By every objective measure of craft and durability, the real, unknown brand destroys the fake famous one. But that's not the trade-off being made. The person who buys the knockoff isn't buying craftsmanship. They're buying the signal of a name they can't afford to carry legitimately. The logo is the entire purchase. The item is just the delivery mechanism. Here is the irony that makes it worse. The people most likely to recognize that it's fake are the people that was purchased to impress. Anyone with genuine familiarity with luxury goods, the stitching, the hardware weight, the leather grain, the logo geometry, can identify a counterfeit from across a room. The performance fails precisely in front of the audience it was designed for. You've paid for an item that deceives no one who matters, while carrying around evidence of the exact gap you were trying to hide. Sign 8. The endless opportunity machine. Not the obvious scams. Those are easy to filter out. The ones worth examining are the ones that are almost plausible. The foreign exchange strategy, the crypto day trading system, the drop shipping framework, the options methodology, the multi-level structure that isn't technically a pyramid if you read the fine print carefully. The fake rich are drawn to these opportunities with a specific and identifiable pattern. They discover something new and go completely all in. They talk about it constantly, project absolute confidence, and begin recruiting people around them. Then, quietly, 6 months later, the topic disappears from their conversation entirely. No accounting of what happened, no reflection on what went wrong. They've already moved to the next opportunity. Equally confident, equally vocal, equally certain this one is different. The trail of abandoned ventures never gets acknowledged because acknowledging failure would rupture the identity they've spent years constructing. Real wealth is built through compounding, slowly, boringly, over years or decades through mechanisms that are almost never dramatic. Consistent contributions to diversified accounts, reinvested returns, time doing most of the work. Nobody makes a viral video about maxing out their retirement account for the 14th consecutive year, but that's what actual wealth accumulation looks like at the foundation level. When someone can't stop talking about their next big opportunity, it usually means their current opportunity isn't delivering what they'd been telling everyone it would.
The psychology underneath. Signs 9 and 10. Sign 9. The unsolicited financial critic. This one operates differently from one-upping. It's more targeted, more personal. You mention you're happy in your current apartment, good neighborhood, manageable rent, close to work. They question why you haven't bought yet, given your income level. You're driving a reliable used car that costs you nothing in payments. They suggest you should be in something newer, something that better reflects where you are professionally. You're saving aggressively and investing consistently. They tell you the money would work harder in whatever they're currently invested in. The advice is always unsolicited. It always points toward the choices they've made, and it carries a consistent undercurrent. Your approach is wrong, and mine is right. Here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. Your different path threatens their narrative. If you're succeeding or even just progressing with a strategy that differs from theirs, it creates a problem. It implies their choices weren't the only logical ones. It raises questions they'd rather not sit with. So they critique your decisions to defend their own. The criticism isn't about helping you. It's about quieting the internal doubt that your success creates in them. Someone who genuinely understands money knows that financial strategy is deeply personal, shaped by income stability, family obligations, risk tolerance, timeline, and a dozen other variables that differ for every person. There is no universal right answer. Anyone who presents their approach as the obvious correct path for everyone is revealing how uncertain they actually are about whether it was the right path for them. The financially confident don't need your validation. The fake rich require it. Sign 10. The loudest person in the room. Too many logos, too much jewelry, cologne that arrives 30 seconds before the person does. Every item on their body selected to broadcast a message. Every accessory functioning as evidence. They've watched how wealthy people look in films and on television and built an aesthetic around that reference, not around actual wealthy people, who, if you've spent time around them, tend to look surprisingly ordinary on any given Tuesday. Consider the people who have genuinely made it to the highest levels. The ones running companies worth billions on a random Wednesday afternoon aren't walking around in head-to-toe branding. They're in a worn pullover and unremarkable trousers. They drive reasonable cars, not because they can't afford otherwise, but because the car stopped being the point a long time ago. Their home might be the same one they bought 15 years ago when they had a fraction of their current net worth. They own everything. They're proving nothing. The person pretending to be rich operates from the exact opposite psychology. They feel they have everything to prove, which means every item becomes a statement and every appearance becomes a performance. The louder the display, the more transparent the desperation underneath it. Here is what excessive status signaling actually communicates to anyone who understands how money works. I need you to believe something about me that I'm not yet certain is true. Actual wealth tends to be quiet, not modest out of humility, but quiet out of indifference. When you've built something real, the opinion of strangers about your watch stops mattering in any practical way.
What real wealth actually looks like. Everything described in this video traces back to one dividing line. The fake rich optimize every financial decision through a single filter. How does this look to other people? Every purchase, every lifestyle choice, every social media post passes through that external lens first. The result is a financial life built around audience perception, expensive to maintain, impossible to sustain, and structurally incapable of generating actual wealth because every dollar is consumed by the performance before it can compound into anything real. The genuinely wealthy optimize through a completely different filter. Does this decision move me forward? Not forward in appearance, forward in actual net worth, actual freedom, actual options. Their financial decisions are made internally, not for an external audience that doesn't know their balance sheet and wouldn't change it either way. This is not a minor philosophical difference, it is the entire game. Fake wealth is a performance that gets more expensive over time, not less. The luxury car needs maintenancing, the wardrobe needs updating every season, the lifestyle needs feeding every month. And the deeper in you go, the more terrifying the alternative becomes. Because stopping the performance means admitting, at least temporarily, that there wasn't much underneath it. The person who has spent 5 years performing wealth often ends up poorer than someone who spent those same 5 years doing nothing remarkable, just saving consistently, avoiding consumer debt, and letting compounding do its quiet work. The treadmill of fake wealth doesn't slow down the longer you stay on it. It speeds up, and it asks for more every single month, just to maintain an illusion that delivers nothing of substance in return. Real wealth is different in every way that matters. It's the freedom to make a decision without consulting your credit card limit. It's the security of knowing an emergency doesn't become a crisis. It's compound growth accumulating in accounts that don't require an audience. It's options, genuine options about how you spend your time and your energy and your years. Options that money quietly buys over time for the people who let it work, instead of spending it on what it looks like they have. The next time you see someone projecting prosperity, you'll know exactly what to look for. The base model luxury badge, the future tense income, the item that cost more than the safety net, constant comparison, and the unsolicited advice in the social media feed that shows only the expensive parts. Fake rich is everywhere once you know the language. But the more important question is the one you ask yourself. Are your financial decisions designed around what genuinely moves you forward, or around what other people think of you in passing moments they'll forget tomorrow? Real wealth doesn't require an audience. It doesn't need a comment section, or a follower count, or a parking spot where anyone can see the badge. It builds quietly, in the background, until one day you realize you have options that most people are still only pretending to have. That's the goal. Not to look like you made it, to actually make it. If this video gave you a new way of seeing your own decisions included, share it with someone who needs the reminder. And if you want more content that cuts through the noise on money and wealth building, subscribe. We're just getting started.